Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Café on Tampa Online. Today we got a great program, and my colleague Del Acosta is going to introduce our speaker. Before he introduces her, I want to say happy 53rd anniversary to Del and his wife Irene. 53 years as of today.
Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you for both Irene and myself. It's been 53 good years. Today we have, as always, we have a very special program, but this one is especially important to me because it represents the Performing Arts Center and the arts in Tampa. Our guest is the top of the line, Judy Lisi, President and CEO of the Straz Center for the Performing Arts. We're so very fortunate to have her here today. She's been with the center for 29 years and everyone has been memorable. Judy, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in Tampa.
Well, I've been in theater for 40 plus years. I started as a performer many years ago and then a director. And then I became artistic director of some theaters. And then I became the executive director of the Schubert Theater in New Haven, Connecticut, which was a very, very famous theater. It was called the birthplace of the nation's greatest hits because all of the shows would start there before they went into New York. And they had renovated it in the early 80s. And I came on in 83 and I was there. And then in 1992, there was a national search for this position. And we had all heard about this amazing performing arts center that was built in Tampa. It was the largest after the Kennedy Center. And we all said, where's Tampa? We didn't even know where Tampa was. So when I got the search firm called me, I said, I'm just going to go down and take a look. And I fell in love. And I've been here now for so many years.
Great.
Well, we've been very fortunate to have you. You really have made the center a success of the West Coast of Florida.
Oh, thank you, Del. I've loved every minute of it. And my family too. My whole family has been here now. We made it our home. We love Tampa.
Just one quick question. Where are you? What do we see behind you?
Well, I'm not really here, but this is a picture of our magnificent Morsani Hall. And those are our red seats behind us. We had a big thing yesterday. I don't know if you heard about it, called the Red Alert. And all of the theaters on Broadway across the country, all the venues turned their lights on red for awareness of what our theaters and concert halls are going through. And so I thought I would put this red behind me.
It's beautiful. It's empty, but Bill, Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. And I use a virtual background too. So thanks for doing that. We want to get into what's happening at the Straz Center, but you really are involved in the Performing Arts Center on a national level in New York, London, other places. Through the foundation, you all invest in place. Can you just tell us what's happening globally with performing arts? And the other day you were telling me about some of the different things happening regarding COVID-19 and what we might expect in the future. Can you just talk about that, please?
Oh, sure, Bill. Well, it's really been really devastating, especially to our artists and producers. We have all been closed since March 13th with absolutely no income, not just here in this country, but in Canada, in Europe, and in the West End in New York. West End and New York are the two major capitals of theater. And then, of course, we're one of the largest Broadway presenters in the country. They call us the Broadway of the South because we do so many, we have a huge Broadway series. And Broadway, touring Broadway is a huge, huge multi-billion-dollar industry. And like ours, many performing arts centers around the country are really kind of like the center of their communities and have huge economic impact. So when we do Broadway shows for a couple of weeks, they bring in hundreds of artists. They stay in hotels here. They buy services here. They eat in our restaurants in the city. And of course, hotels and restaurants are so depressed right now because of what's going on with COVID. So it's critical that we find a way to reopen all of these performing arts centers that communities around the country have invested in, and because of quality of life and making our cities, wonderful places to be. So I am on a number of national task forces. One is the Performing Arts Center Consortium, which is the large 30 performing arts centers in North America. We're the third largest on the East Coast of the country after Lincoln Center and Kennedy Center, and we're the third largest, and we're about the 8th or 9th largest in the country. And we're a very close group. And we're also now also discussing, in addition to the fact that our performing arts centers are closed, we're also responding to our Black Lives Matter and what's going on in our country, because we kind of are like the soul of a community, and it's really important that we address these things and be models of how we can improve and grow and develop. So I'm also I've been a Tony voter for 38 years, I think. I've been on the executive committee of the Broadway League for 32 years. I was the only woman on the Broadway League board for like 10 years. But now there's so many women that are involved on the highest level. So it's been quite a wonderful journey. Now, COVID, you asked about COVID. The problem is because we're mass gathering places, we're more like arenas and stadiums, because our artists are kind of like athletes, because when they're on stage, performing artists, they sing and so they spit and they dance, they do great dance, but they sweat. And so one of the big things we're struggling with is how we keep them safe so that they can perform, so they can tour again, because they can't, touring is very risky. They've got to get on planes, they have to be in hotels, they're going from theater to theater where the health protocols might be different. So we're trying to solve all those things. And Lauren Shepard, who also has been with us for 28, almost 30 years, he is chairing with the COO of Kennedy Center, a national committee of how we're going to reopen these buildings and come up with these safe protocols and mitigation programs for our artists and for our audiences. The issue is social distancing doesn't work with the kind of work that we do. The shows are too big. The producers need to know that they're going to be able to get the revenue to be able to do these shows. So even on Broadway, they are not going to open until they can open safely at 100% capacity. And the West End, it's the same thing. So that's what we're struggling with. What we're looking for, I know everything you ever want to know about testing right now, because one of the solutions are going to be either through testing with immediate results or the vaccines. And that's how we'll be able to get people in safely. Now that's Broadway. What our Performing Arts Center is doing is we are planning to reopen in some of our theaters in the fall, but with programs that we're producing with local artists. Since touring artists aren't touring, we've got some wonderful local artists that we usually do there too, but we're working out their health protocols. And then we can do some of those with social distancing. And I think that's going to be how we start attracting people to come back. We're going to have a Winter Wonderland Festival on our beautiful campus outdoors, where we have our Riverwalk stage, and they're doing the Nutcracker in a very cool way. They're not doing it on stage, they're doing it all around the campus, so that it's kind of like a progressive Nutcracker. You could see one scene on the Riverwalk stage and another scene in one of our lobbies and another scene in our tent that's on the Riverwalk. So we can keep people in small groups, but they could be moving progressively around the campus. So we're just looking at any kind of alternative ways so we could gradually attract people back to the center safely as we wait till we resume full operations, which we're keeping fingers crossed, will be in April.
Well, that really speaks very well of your leadership. But let me ask you an even larger question, because everything that I'm reading about the performing arts and other centers, your colleagues are saying that without a large infusion of federal funds, these centers are not going to be able to survive more than 2 or 3 years. Is that correct? And how do you feel about that?
Well, that's true, Del, because it's like we're a not-for-profit business. We're like any other business. You have to have revenue in order to survive. And so we had a thriving not-for-profit business. It's probably as good as it gets. We only raise, and this is different from other performing arts groups, we only raise about 15% of contributions. The rest, 85%, is earned revenue. That's how healthy our business is here at the Performing Arts Center. But the majority of that is through Broadway and big pop events, the big events like that. But without revenue, you can only last as long. Now, the good news with us is we don't have any debt. I mean, that's how I run a place. I've seen too many arts organizations pile up debts and deficits. And we had a $4 million deficit when I got here. And I said, that's never going to happen here again. So we had no debt. I did raise endowment. Much of it is in pledges, but that's going in the right direction. But the truth of the matter is you need money to come from, you need capital. So we were fortunate that we got the first CARES Act PPP, and that was extremely helpful. So we're actually living on that now. There also is a bill that's sponsored by Senator Klobuchar and Cronin from Minnesota and Cronin from Texas, called Save Our Stages. And that will provide grants. I think the top one would be 12 million to large performing arts centers and venues like ours. However, we also are hearing through Senator Rubio's office that might be rolled into what they're calling the Restart Act in the fall. And that's for businesses like ours that were the first to close, and they're going to be the last to reopen. So we're working very hard with our other cohorts around the country to come together. And that's what this red alert was last night, when everybody turned their lights on red in all theaters around the country to try to bring attention to this.
I don't think everybody knows what the red alert was last night. Could you kind of explain to our audience what that was?
Yes.
It
Yes, it was really terrific. Actually, if you go on Tampa Bay Online, you can see all the pictures. But we were asked, and we put out the alert to all of our colleagues here in the Tampa Bay area, to turn your venue with red light, whether you threw it up on the venue or if you have red lights, or you have either inside or outside. And it was to call attention to the fact that we're on life support right now. And we wanted this awareness so our communities can help us with our legislators for this Save Our Stages bill or the Restart program. And I've given presentations now to Hillsborough County Commission and our own city council. And I mean, people get it. They get it. It's just how to do it. Yeah.
Well, you're too important to fail. Who do we and our audience need to contact to assure that you have the resources to be able to be fully functional and alive and healthy in 3 years?
Oh, that's a great question, Del. Well, actually, it's always helpful if you contact our local legislators, because they need to hear from you. They have got a lot on their plate, but they need to hear from their constituency that this is important to them. So reach out to, city council to say, we really think this is important when time comes, or if they need it. And also, if you go online to Save Our Stages, there's a page there, and they direct you to where you can help contact people. And just contact, Kathy Castor has already signed on to the Save Our Stages bill, and we do have sponsors from around the country. The fact is, there's many needs out there, and it's hard trying to, figure it all out. But we are very important to our local economy. We're important to quality of life. We're important to education. We have a major arts education program here, and we have been able to keep our 54 partnerships throughout the community. They're still open, and although we're doing it virtually for now. And our conservatory is open, both virtually and in the conservatory. But yeah, I mean, people have to hear that, and everybody knows who their legislators are. So reach out and say, please help.
Let me make an ad for Cafe con Tampa. Anybody watching now, please hit the share button. We provide this service for free so that the information like this can be broadly shared and picked up by everybody. Also, if you have any questions, if you're watching this live, please post it underneath the feed or to the right, depending on how you're watching it. We'll try to get to it. One of the questions was, by West End, you mean London? And I think the answer is yes on that.
Oh, yeah. The West End. West End in London is like the Broadway of New York. They just, it's just the name for it. Yeah.
So, and I love geeking out with Judy about theater. Hopefully when we reopen, we can talk about shows sometime. But my next question leads into that. You had a whole schedule of very successful shows that you had before you, and now all that whole season has been delayed. So what would you show next year? Would you skip all of that, or would you start where you left off?
Well, that is, you couldn't have asked a better question. First of all, we had millions of dollars of refunds that we had to give back because we have sold out in March when we had to shut down so abruptly. It was opening night of Jersey Boys, completely sold out for the week. Then we had Miss Saigon, completely sold out. These are $1.5 million shows. We had to refund all of that money. And, you know, cash flow is very challenging. And then the next shows, the Donna Summer show and My Fair Lady, also were sold very, very well. We were able, Miss Saigon went away. The Cameron McIntosh just decided he was done. He wasn't doing anymore. But My Fair Lady, which is a Lincoln Center production, we were able to reschedule, and the Donna Summer musical, we were also able to reschedule. And then we had this fabulous season. We had Hadestown, and I mean, just like which won the Tony last year, and the return of the show about the kid that Ben Platt was in. What's the name of the show? And anyway, Dear Evan Hansen. We have Hamilton coming up again. We have The Prom, which is, they're making it into a movie now. And Wicked, we had Wicked in January, which is huge. Wicked plays, it always completely sells out. What the Broadway producers decided after rescheduling everything, that they were not prepared to come to Florida because of COVID. They said, we just can't, we feel we can't play there. And again, I don't think it was because they don't like Florida. It's not that at all. They need to ensure the health of these companies. And I think it wasn't like Tampa as much as South Florida. And the problem is when these shows tour, they have contiguous tours. So when they don't just play Tampa, they also play South Florida and maybe East. Like they usually have 3 spots when they come to Florida because it's such a big state. And the problem they're running into, if you think about it, when they put out a tour, it has to tour the country. It can't get to Cincinnati and all of a sudden there's a spike in Cincinnati and they have to close down the show. They can't survive that way. So it's a real challenge trying to figure out how they're going to make this, how they're going to make this work. But again, once we get immediate testing or the vaccine, it's just, we have to be patient. It's a timing thing right now.
Then that really means that you really do need an infusion of capital to be able to survive.
Yes.
Again, you're just too important to fail. After World War II, and correct me if I'm wrong on this fable, but Milan was bombed by the Allies and then by the Nazis. And many of its great artifacts were destroyed by the bombing. The first major venue to reopen there was the La Scala, the opera house.
Absolutely.
That was so important to the culture and to rebuild the community, both spiritually and physically. Is that a true story, first of all?
That is a true story. And there's another story about Winston Churchill when they were bombing London in World War II. They said, we need to close the theaters. And he said, no, he said, that's what we're fighting for. People need these theaters. And they kept the theaters open throughout World War II. That's how important they are to the fabric of culture there. So, but COVID is in a way, it's different even from getting bombed. You know, it's like, you can't even see this with what we're dealing with, you know.
Well, the impact, though, is we have to put our resources as we rebuild. It's a very important facility to open up, probably right after schools, in my opinion.
Oh, Thank you, Del.
So we have a question from the floor. Jason Ball asks, how has COVID impacted the facility's fundraiser for the roughly $100 million renovations expansion proposed a couple of years ago? Is that still in process, or has it been downsized or shelved with funds sought to perpetuate operations instead?
Yeah, great question. What we decided to do is just to put the project on hold. Interestingly enough, and this in a way, it was fortunate, we were planning to break ground this summer. Had we had shovels in the ground, our circumstance could have been ever so much worse. So fortunately, or unfortunately with this crazy thing, at least we weren't in the middle of a construction project. There are many performing arts centers around the country that are in the middle of $1 million projects. And now they've got to figure out how to do this and how to get through that. So in a way, we were fortunate for that. What has happened at the Performing Arts Center, however, is I think your viewers might know that there is a big apartment complex called Air Tower, a 36-story tower that is being built right where we are there. And they had to take down a lot of our property to be able to do that and change our arrival plaza. And our big concern, this tells you how things could change. Our big concern is we were so busy. How are we going to be able to welcome our guests during all of this construction? Well, the good news is they're almost finished with that now, and we didn't have our guests. So that's another, I guess, good thing.
Could you just, for anybody who doesn't know or hasn't heard it, would you mind giving a 30-second on what that plan was, how you were going to engage the river walk, and when it might come back again?
Well, honestly, it's such an exciting project in this weird times that we're in. But if you look at where the Performing Arts Center is, it's on this promontory that just gently goes out into Hillsborough County. If you ever have a boat, you have to go under the Cass Street Bridge, and it just goes out a little bit and then around. And we have this incredible property on the river. And now the river walk has been such a huge success, but we didn't have a way of welcoming people because our lobbies, the way our Performing Arts Center was designed, we have a lobby for each theater, but they're all locked up until the show opens. And then you open the lobby and you welcome guests that way. We wanted to blow open our facility right to the river, so it would be open to everyone with shows and without shows, so we could have a lot of activity for our citizens and really welcome them, so they didn't have to spend money on a show. We would have a lot of activity right there with local artists. It's similar, I don't know, some of your viewers might be familiar with the Kennedy Center, but it's a memorial. So the Kennedy Center is open all the time with this huge lobby, and they have daily events there where people can just come and take tours and view. So that was the idea of is opening it up right to the river. We're kind of like up on a hill and a little open. So we were going to just take it right out. So it's a great plan, and we have like 5 or 6 years we've been working on this plan. And our fundraising was doing very well. I know, Bill, you've been, guiding us along the way. But, you have to shift priorities. So we said, this is not a time for this now. We have to get through this first. We've got a great plan. We have to make sure we make this place financially healthy again. We reopen, and then we will move forward from there. So it's not going away. It's just timing.
Where do you see us, let's say 18 months from today, or where would you like for us to be in 18 months? Assuming we have a vaccine.
Well, I think we'll probably resume more normal operations if we are able to get a vaccine for this terrible illness, and if we can stabilize. I think we should resume more normal, our more normal way of doing business, maybe April or May. But I think it's probably going to take maybe another year to build up the business again, because I still think there's going to be a lot of people. It's going to take them a little time to, to get beyond. The fear is a hard thing to overcome, and especially for our older citizens like me. I'm being very careful because I need to. So I think it's going to take us maybe a year and a half to where we are at the level of business that we had when we closed March 13th.
I have another question from the floor, and then I want to add another one, a longer one that you can answer. But the question from the floor is, will parking be improved after the construction? And then after you answer that, if you could switch gears and tell us about how through the foundation you invest in theater productions in New York and London, and how that impacts what you are able to show in Tampa.
Okay, two great questions. Yes, parking is an issue. We try to include a parking solution in the master plan, but where we are on the river, we couldn't find a parking option that wasn't tremendously expensive. I think the project grew from 80 million to like 130 million. And I just didn't think that we could do that. So that was one of the plans we had, and it didn't seem feasible. With that said, I know the city has been working on a parking study, and that part of the city is growing so fast. I think at some point it is going to become I think a city issue, because people have to park, until we have mass transit, we still have cars, and we have to figure out how we could do that we have all these great assets in downtown Tampa now, but people have to be able to get here, and they have to be able to park. Now, with that said, we did, not me, but our COO and our board leadership, they engaged a study of all the available parking adjacent to the Performing Arts Center. And now they have this mobile option. So if you buy your parking ahead, it will tell you exactly what garage you should go to. And we get very few complaints now. I think, so there is parking available, but we had to really dig in our heels and come up with a system that would work. So I think sometimes, because it had gotten so bad, I mean, we solved a lot of it, but I think there's still a perception, because we don't have our own parking garage, that might be worse than what it is. But we have made some headway on that. Now, what was your other question, Bill?
The other question, it was about how you through the foundation, how you invest in theater productions.
Yes. Well, all shows, when they're being produced, they need capital, and any Broadway musical now, the budgets are like between 10 and 14 million. King Kong last couple of years ago was like 32 million, which was crazy. But as in any business, you have to invest in your business. Broadway is a very important part of our programming, and it brings tremendous revenue, and it drives all of our food and beverage activity and all of this economic impact downtown. So it's like so we need to invest in the product that's coming down the line. And so we invest in maybe, I don't put a lot in, but we invest maybe in 4 or 5, what we know are going to be the big shows that are coming in. Why do we do that? Well, they know Tampa, and they really like us because we invest. So I want to get the best shows possible here, and I get our rights. So we have a lot of venues in the community, but I invest so we can get the Tampa market rights. So we always know we're going to get the best shows to Tampa first.
Del, you want to ask the last question? We could talk.
And sometimes we make money. Sometimes we actually make money from the show itself, like Dear Evan Hansen, for example.
Well, very good. No, the last question I wanted to ask is Opera Tampa. I know you do have a production schedule, but tell us about Opera Tampa for the next season.
Well,
The
you're
next
the right
season.
man to ask that question. Del was on our board for many years. Opera Tampa, what we're doing with Opera Tampa is looking again at how we could do it safely. For example, we're doing it was going to be a big production of Il Trovatore, which is a large Verdi opera. But we're looking at doing it with orchestrations without woodwinds and without brass, because it's woodwinds and brass where you get those aerosols coming out, because the musician is blowing into the instrument. So we're planning to do it with percussion, strings, and two synthesizers that will pick up the horn and the woodwind sound. And we're going to do it all on stage. And we're going to put the chorus, we're going to separate the chorus and stage it so that they're away from the audience high. And so it's just how we're figuring, to be honest with you, Del, we're figuring it out. And then Pirates of Penzance, we had already built a set for it. We were supposed to open that the day that we had to close was opening night of Pirates of Penzance. And we had this beautiful set and costumes. So we decided, well, let's do it again. I mean, we didn't do it. We were all rehearsed. So I won't have the expense of rehearsal. And I have the set already. So we're going to do that. And then Madame Butterfly, which is everybody's favorite. So now how we're going to do that, our first one is scheduled late January. However, if we need to push it deeper into the season because of health protocols and we're not sure we can do it, then we'll just move it. But I feel very hopeful we'll be able to do our 3 operas this season.
Let me.
How are our local performing artists surviving?
It is so tough. It is really tough. It's really hard. As a matter of fact, that's why at least I'm glad we're able to employ many of our local artists. At least that will help a little bit. But it's really hard. And for professional artists, like in New York, New York is so expensive to begin with. They've gotten unemployment. But other than that, it's really hard on them. It's hard on musicians. It's hard on dancers. We have no safety nets in our country for artists. So it's really hard. I worry about them all the time, actually.
Let me, as we get ready to wrap up, let me give a quick plug. You mentioned the Patel Conservatory, and for disclosure, all 3 of my kids have been through programs there. And when it's safe to do so, I highly recommend everybody send their kids through there. The friends you make, the different kinds of experiences you have, and the confidence that kids build, even if they're not going to be performers forever. And you have people who've gone on to Broadway and all kinds of stuff. But I want to use that as a jumping off point to get you to tell one final story. Tell everybody the story about Lin Manuel Miranda before Hamilton, how he was involved with the
Yeah, well, Lin came down many years ago. His first show was called In the Heights. That was his first show, and I was a follower his. And the first time I saw In the Heights, it was way downtown in a little theater. I think maybe it was 150 people. And the producer, Kevin McCallum, who I know very well, I was in New York. He said, Judy, I want you to come down and see this. I really think it's going to be something. So, and then I invested in it. And so when the show went out on the road, they decided to start it in Tampa. And that means because when you first put a show up on the road, it's like putting the show together all over again, because you're his new artist, it's a new set, it's everything. And they were here for like 3 or 4 weeks. And this is why I'm so happy he has had this success. He's such a great guy. He would come into the conservatory every day and talk to the kids who had master classes. He went into the community and met the kids, because we have all of these like 52 partnerships throughout the community. And he'd walk into the office and say, where are we going today, Judy? I mean, he just loved it. And, he has the soul of an artist, but he really cares about the community. But when he's in your community, it's like it's his community. And it was just a wonderful experience. So I saw him, I was sitting behind him. I'm a Tony voter, and I was sitting watching a show in New York for the Tonys, and I was sitting behind him, and he was walking. I said, "Oh, that's Lin." So I saw him in they have a special place that we went, and I said, "Lin," I said, "I don't know if you remember me, but you were down in Tampa for Judy. We had such a great time. That was great. We loved it." So he's a people. He really is a people person. He really cares about people. So it's great.
Well, thank you for telling that story. I think it's important because you never know who's going to be going through either as a spectator, participant, whatever, and you never know what your kids might be able to get access to. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks everybody for watching. Please be sure to hit the share button, like buttons, and subscribe buttons. Judy, do you have any websites or anything, any final thoughts you'd like to pass on there?
Well, strazcenter.org, and it can give you a lot of information about who to contact for the kind of support I was requesting, and a lot of information about the center. And we will be back. All of these seats behind me are going to be filled again. I promise you that.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Del. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Del. Good
Thank
seeing
you.
you.